Welcome to The Thriving Mama, the podcast that teaches you not just how to survive, but to thrive in motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie David. Last week, I found myself internally beating myself up about not spending as much time with my kids this summer. Typically, in years past, I have made a very intentional decision to kind of carve out at least one day a week to do things with them, to get outside, to go for a hike, to go to the park. And this summer, just because of, travel schedules, like us visiting family, I found that my availability to work was much more condensed and compressed. And so I didn't have as much time to do those things with my children. And I had this little internal dialogue going on about how bad I was and, that I should be doing better. And then I, had my, moment of realization that, I'm doing the best I can. My kids are thriving, which is great. And just the importance of we talk a lot about this, not judging ourselves. And as I get older, I realize how important it is not to judge other people or myself. As I sit here, I'm acutely aware of the fact that I have been judging myself, for what I perceived as lack of doing with my kids this summer. Since I have a practice, I have a program, I started this podcast, I've been very busy and I realized I needed help and I can't do it all myself. So I actually brought somebody on to help me, which has definitely lightened the load a little bit, but I've definitely still been experiencing that guilt. But then I thought about it and, they've been playing outside with their friends, doing kid things more than ever, which is amazing. They go around the neighborhood like I did when I was a kid and they play at the park and they ride their bikes everywhere and they, they're doing all sorts of fun kid things. And I've watched my almost 7-year-old go from being a very shy, withdrawn kid to actually standing up for herself and putting up boundaries and embracing new friendships, which is amazing. And I've watched my 11-and-a-half-year-old kind of blossom into a more focused at his sports. And so the time that I haven't spent with them, they've used to help themselves grow, and don't get me wrong. We definitely have days where, when I'm trying to see patients or record a podcast and things don't go right and I can't seem to get anything done. And, there's a lot of, sometimes chaos. But, I remind myself that in the end, we're all okay. It's just, it's a delicate dance of balance. I would also say communication, keeping things honest with your kids and making them aware of situations. My kids know that I'm busy because I've got a lot of things going on. And they also know that I'm actively trying to make it so that I'm not spread so thin. And so this is going to be an episode of Real Mom Talk where we're talking about, being a mom is hard. It's not easy and that's okay. And we're going to talk about, judgment and not judging other people and some of the things that I've seen and I've experienced, and also a conversation I had with a friend just a little while ago. So in this episode, we're going to discuss the importance of acknowledging that we each as moms have our own journey, and that's relevant. We're also going to talk about how we can use mom judgment as a trigger to promote awareness and cultivate empathy, and how it can be used as a tool for support and change. Want to chat and get more personalized support? I'm offering podcast listeners a free 20-minute Thriving Mama check-in where we'll evaluate your physical, mental, and emotional health and provide useful resources to help you on your journey. You will find that link in the show notes. So I was talking to a friend earlier today, and she is actually just about to be 70. And it's interesting as I reflect back on life right now, I have friends that are in their mid-20s and I have friends into their 70s. And I feel like that, it just reflects, kind of a mature stage in life. I don't care what age somebody is. If they're, a good person and we have a good connection and they're bringing something positive to my life, then I'm all for it. I don't care, what the age of the person is. And I also think it helps give perspective on where we all are on our journeys. And that kind of brings me to the importance of that for, what I mentioned before. The first point is acknowledging that we all have our own journey. And so this morning, I was speaking with that friend who is almost 70, and she was talking about some of the challenges that she's having with her adult children. And I know I've mentioned this before, but so many of us, we think that the hard part is now. Whatever we are in this stage of motherhood is the hard part. And I would say that the whole journey it's hard. It's never going to be easy because life isn't easy. And she was just talking about how, how she has several children and they all don't get along and see eye to eye. And they also, just as people can be, they feel like, some children got more attention or more of whatever than the other ones. And that creates, some friction and some turmoil. And she's in the middle of it and it's hard. And she also was doing what we all do and kind of having a lot of the mom guilt for, saying, I should have done this or I could have done this. And I stopped and I said to her, I was like, no, I'm like, you did the best you could do in that moment. And that it's true. For a lot of her journey, she was a single mom and she was just trying to survive herself and make a decent life for her kids. And that's what I said to her. I'm like, you were doing your best. And I asked her if she had talked to her kids about this. And she said, not really, because she didn't want to put her stuff on her kids. And I said, very gently, you know what? I think it's important to tell your kids how you're feeling and that you did try your best and, given the circumstance, because that's something that I think, especially we say that we're trying to shield our children or protect our children. But in many ways, we're only really trying to protect ourselves when we say that. We're trying to protect ourselves from having difficult conversations and feeling certain emotions. And so that's what I said to her. I was like, you know what? I have those conversations now with my almost 7-year-old and my 11-year-old. I'm like, if I'm struggling in some way and it's causing me to maybe say things that I don't mean or do things that I don't mean, I tell them. I will always apologize. I will always say, hey, mommy's just super busy right now. And I'm sorry that, maybe if they were trying to get my attention and I said not now or something like that, I always want them to feel seen and heard. And I want them to understand, what's going on in life and why I might be reacting a certain way. Because I don't want them to get to the point when they're older that they're feeling resentful and they look back and think, my mom did not try her best for me. So we have conversations about that. And I think it's important to have them, to continue those conversations, not just when they're children, but, as, teens and young adults and very adult children. I think it's important to have these lines of communication open. And it's also really important, like I said, to acknowledge that we all have our own journey. And from the outside, it might seem like other people have it easier. But I will tell you from doing this work for 20 years almost that nobody has it easy. Even the people who look like they have that picture perfect life don't have it easy. We all have our own struggles, whether we put it out there on social media or put it out there for other people to hear or see. It's I always say you cannot judge other people for their journey. It's what we might perceive as, somebody doing something not so good. It might be the best that they can be doing. And, I felt like I became very aware of that when I was living in Boulder, Colorado. I think some of you know I do live in the state of Colorado and I've lived all over the state. When we moved back here, we had lived here and then we moved to Minnesota. We came back and we moved to the Boulder area because I have lots of friends there. And one thing that I noticed that really bothered me was that there was this group that I was a member of on Facebook called Boulder Area Moms. And at least at this period of time, I haven't been in that group in probably 4 years now, because we moved southward, and that, didn't really pertain to me, but I didn't really like what was happening in that group anyway. So I was glad to leave it. But there was so much judgment. I just witnessed, moms berating other moms because they couldn't breastfeed. Well, you want to know what? Some moms can't breastfeed. Some moms, it just is not in the cards for them and it can't happen. But these mothers would go on there looking for support, and they would get berated about not being able to breastfeed. Or another thing, like choosing like natural products versus conventional products. Yeah. I mean, in my practice, I always tell people, choose them when you can afford to. If you can't, so be it. And that's okay. But it was like when people didn't choose the natural route and on many things, like these moms would get chastised. What else? I'm trying to think of some of the other examples. Oh, I mean, it even got so far as like supporting moms in the local community, even though Boulder is to live there, you have to have a lot of money. It's very expensive. We did not live in Boulder. We lived outside of Boulder in an adjacent city, but right next to it, because it costs a lot of money. And there were moms in there who, moms who were just like seeking advice and support on how to make more money, or also like if people were donating things. And they would get chastised sometimes for that too. And somehow the conversations would devolve into, supporting people in other countries, or why aren't we supporting, it's something that's going on in, the East or the Middle East, when, we had so many problems and, homelessness and hunger and so many issues going on in our own backyard. And it just boggled my mind to see these women attack women in need who just needed support and needed some kindness and love in their direction. And it was a big aha moment for me, because then, we ended up moving during the pandemic. We moved about a little over an hour south. And, I love where I live too. But again, in this area, there's different kinds of judgment. I feel like it's more in the, political and religious arenas here. But it's like one of those things where it's like, we're all human beings. We all want the same things. We all want to be happy. We all want to be healthy. We all have so much more in common. And I just, it makes me very sad when I see people judging each other for such ridiculous and simple and seemingly superficial things. Like many people can't help the situation that they're in. So you should not be judging them for that. And especially a journey of a mama, because we all know how difficult it is to raise kids. There's always, that those thoughts in our heads are, am I doing good enough as a mom? Am I, providing enough? Am I exposing them to enough or too little? Or, so many things, so many questions we all have. So until I've walked in somebody else's shoes, and I know this sounds completely cliche, I am not going to be judging them. I will say the caveat is, unless they're a horrible person, unless somebody is doing something bad to children or to themselves or something of that nature, there are sometimes some not great people in this world. We all know that. But, we really, in many, many, many situations, we need to reserve judgment, because being a mom is not easy. So I just wanted to, put that out there, because it's something I see more frequently than I would like to. And it really is disheartening to watch that happen in reality. And I would say, I feel like it's happening less and less. I feel like people are supporting each other more. But like I said, I think we need to actively cultivate kindness and empathy and generosity. And that leads me to my next point, was we can use what I always call the mom judgment as a trigger to promote awareness and cultivate empathy for other people. So oftentimes, like if I'm reading a post on Facebook or on Instagram, or I hear a conversation, and I would say I don't do this very much anymore because I think I've trained myself not to be judgmental. But if I feel any bit of judgment creeping in, I use it as a moment of reflection for myself to be aware and think, why do I feel this way? Am I doing something that I feel, poorly about? Do I feel guilty about something? Do I, is this something that I may have done that it's bothering me because I'm hearing somebody else say it, right? We can always use life as a mirror. And so if I ever, start to feel that, kind of any kind of judgment creep in, I use that as a tool to try to, promote awareness in myself, but then also to cultivate empathy for those people. And so again, like I said, I try to put myself in their shoes and understand why they're doing what they're doing or saying what they're saying. And another thing I will also say is a lot of times when people are in an emotionally vulnerable state, they're not always clearly articulating what they need or how they feel. And so sometimes I think that comes across, poorly to other people. And that's something else that I always try to be cognizant of. The more stress we are under, the more your brain does not function well. We know that there is, in the health world, there's a direct correlation between levels of stress and kind of brain fog and decreased brain function or executive function. So, it's really important to be mindful of supporting people in life and on their journey, because like I said, we're all on our own journey and they're all relevant at all different stages of motherhood. Having an infant is very hard and tiring and taxing because they require so much of us. And then that child turns into a toddler and they're, kind of learning independence and they're all over the place and they're kind of like an energetic handful. And then it turns into, a younger child who, around the age of 5 or 6, they realize that they're not part of mommy. They develop their own identity, start to spread their own wings, and their own personality starts to show up, and, they're starting to become themselves. They're these little humans, who have their own, personalities and identities, and then they turn into teenagers, and, that can be filled with challenges if you allow it to. We recorded a podcast with Jasmine Chandler about, teens, and she gave some great tips for making the teenage years positive for everybody. So if you haven't heard that one, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. But then, your kids turn into young adults. And again, it's like exploring even more independence and individuality and discovering who they are. And then they go on the same journeys that we've been on. Sometimes they get jobs and, have a family. They're all, they're their own individuals. And as moms, it can be hard to witness this because we have given so much of ourselves to them. So that's what I always tell people to keep in mind. When you go to judge another mom, think about where she is on her journey, and don't necessarily, hold that against her, because you don't know what's going on, behind closed doors, so to speak, in her world. So, just tread lightly and be very aware and kind. And then the last point I just wanted to make about all of this is using this, like the piece of judgment, as a tool for support and change. So instead of judging these moms, let's be the change. Let's support other moms. That is the whole premise of what I'm doing with this podcast. And so much of my work is trying to support moms across the board, regardless of what life state you're at. If you are a new mom, if you're a mom that's 75 and has 8 kids, and everything in between. Even if you're a mom who's lost children, that too. I mean, and if you're a mom who had a child and now you don't have any more, that you're still a mom. And it matters. And I see you, we all see you. It's a difficult journey. And I think our job as women and moms is to support and uplift other. It's something I feel very, very strongly about because we live in an increasingly divided world. And it makes me so sad to see what's happening to so many of the moms around me and my own community. There are, personally in my community, there's a lot of military moms who are effectively single moms because so many of their husbands are deployed. And it's tough. It is tough running that schedule, watching those moms. They're, like I said, they're essentially alone. A lot of them don't have, a family to support them. A lot of us don't. I don't have family around here either, but I have a good community of people. But a lot of them, they're moving from place to place every 2, 3, 4 years. And so it's hard to put down roots and it's hard to have people to support you. So I feel for those military mamas. And whenever I have the opportunity to help them out with like carpool or, taking their kids around. And that's often what they ask for. It's funny because they're like, I don't need my laundry done. I don't need you to make me dinner. If you can help me transport my kids or take my kids and give me a minute to myself, that would be great. That would be super helpful. So my challenge to you is to find a mom or 2 or 3 in your community that you can reach out to and support in some way. Because like we're saying, and this is real mom talk, being a mom isn't easy. I think, again, on social media, people either like to show it as being glamorous and, perfect and all the highlights, or else they show it as being a total like chaotic tornado, which neither one are reality. Somewhere in between is likely what the reality of their life is. They're just, showing up on social media that way. But, we need to support each other. So if you can find some moms in your community that you can support by, helping them out with carpool or taking their kids to a practice or whatever. If it's, gymnastics or, we've got a lot of people here who do art classes too. So helping carpool in that way, or taking her kids for a couple of hours so she can have a moment to herself. And I would say, even if she has a spouse, because sometimes, you don't know if that spouse is like busy working, or like I said, they could be deployed, or they have a job where they're away from the house quite a bit. So any way that you can help support that mom, just ask what she needs, how you can best support her. She might just need somebody to listen to her, because that's something, again, in my, 2 decades here, almost of practice, that sometimes you just need to listen. In my job, that's a lot of what I do. I listen to people and just let them share their feelings. And then, if we're doing some of the other work, we're actually working on transforming those feelings. But first and foremost, you need to be heard. So there's that piece of it as well. So go out there and find some other moms that you can support and uplift. And the conclusion and the last piece I want to leave with is this: life is not black and white. And the more we can see the shades of gray in other mothers' journeys, the better this world will be for all of us and our children. If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. Taking action is what truly sparks change. If you're overwhelmed and don't have enough energy to make it through the day, I invite you to book a free 20-minute coaching call with me. It's a no-obligation chat where we can discuss your health goals and how I might be able to help you achieve them. Visit the link in the episode description to book that call. Until next time, keep striving for wellness, and remember, you have the power to not just survive, but thrive in motherhood.